quite a mess when you're designing something. I'm gonna clean some of this off before I get to this. I just had to find this. It got buried over there. Whew.
Looking at all our pieces laid out, the radio comes with this bracket right here. This bracket is big enough to fill the hole behind the unit here, similar to the bracket that comes with the MTF1 kit. So with that mounted in place, this will sit there and look very nice. What we have to figure out is how to screw it into place. It does come with this cage, but it's kind of shallow. Obviously not the size that we have. So there's a couple things going on here that I'm thinking about. I'm just trying to put all the pieces together how I want to do them right now. So after taking a bunch of measurements off of the screen and the radio themselves, because the way this mounts in the dash is the screen screws into the radio like this, and there's a screw that goes here, and that screw, there's nothing behind it. So this actually has to be this length, not this length. So I had to add those all together. And after playing around a little bit, we ended up with this guy here. What this does is this mimics the top screen where this is, which brought us into another problem. If you'll notice, see how this comes out and up? The reason why it does that is there's part of the dash there that once we get inside I'll show you, which posed a small problem. We had to do a little bit of trimming. But this is the mock-up made out of wood. Now I did run into a few problems. I measured off of the radio holes here and not the screen holes, so I had these wrong, so I actually had to move them out a little bit, which on the final product I've already taken care of that in the software, so for these I just dremeled out a little bit. But let's head into the car and I'll show you how this goes in.
The first piece that I had to take off was this top bracket right here. There's two screws here and here that get in the way of where the radio goes. The factory, that's what that bent piece was, it actually brings the radio out and up. Well, ours is solid, so it won't be able to do that. So we unscrew this. Now this will be able to go back in. We will have to remove these two screw down points. There'll be plenty to hold it in place. It's not gonna be an issue for us. Once that came out, we had to trim the dash up and across here and remove that lower portion, which got us level with this piece of metal right here, which is gonna allow the radio to slide into place. This attaches using these 4 factory screw holes, lines up, and then this sits over the top of it just like this, and that's it. It's all done. We don't have to remove this metal bracket because it's a short chassis, but a deep chassis radio would go in here with no issues. I did pull these out because I needed some way to reach up in there and tilt the radio back and forth because I needed to know how long to make the arms that come out. As far as cutting goes, this was the only piece that had to go. This is just the wood mock-up to make sure everything fits nice and looks sexy in the dash, and it does. Next, we'll cut it out of 1/8 inch acrylic. We'll glue it all together. Boom, done. Spray paint it black, maybe. I don't know. While that's happening, because the laser will be doing its thing, I'm gonna start getting the harness all set and figuring out what pieces I need and don't need from that. Harness. A lot of this we're not gonna need, so we're gonna remove it. Let's pull off our Kenwood part first. I like to just start by removing all the tape. And the big bundle in the middle is as good a place as any.
Now for Fords, they have this red piece inside here that locks the wiring in place. If you're gonna depin it, just push up through the side, it unlocks it, and it'll fall right out. On this harness, we're not gonna be retaining this aux because it is not wired that way. Plus he has an iPhone, so there's no reason to leave these wires in here. This pink with a red stripe bundle of wire here. This is for secondary phone controls on the steering wheel. So like push to talk and answer and hang up. If the car has an external module for that, you have to run this over to the module. Our radio doesn't, it's all one piece. So we can remove this. This is the amplified system. None of these speaker wires are gonna be used. This also does not have the plug for the factory subwoofer in the car. We'll remove that. I'm gonna hop in the car real quick and see if any of these other wires need to be removed. The wires that I did cut off the little pigtails from, I'll unpin them and slide over some heat shrink and replace that. Now that the harness is cleaned up, all the unnecessary wiring is out of it, we'll start by taping our wiring. And how I like to do that is I like to go from the plug side of the brain, meaning the RR, what plugs into that, I work from that out into the center. What that'll give me is that'll just give me a nice uniform bundle of wires. When we dress up our wiring harnesses, we use exterior Tessa tape as opposed to interior Tessa tape. It just holds up a little better. All of it is gonna get sticky and messy over time. And that's what we end up with now. These, of course, are the iData communication wires, iData brain, harnesses that plug in, and then we just have a few wires that are gonna hook up to the radio. We have the remote turn on, always hook that up. I don't care if it's an amplified system or not, always hook it up. The red accessory, purple, white, reverse, yellow, constant 12 volts, black, ground, orange, illumination, and the pink is the VSS wire. He doesn't need it for this radio, but I always leave it here. We'll cap it off, and if we ever decide to go with something that has wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto and it requires the VSS wire, which most of them don't now, but if it does, we'll have it here to get at. On our Kenwood harness, we got a couple wires here that we're not going to be using, and we'll cap those off as well. All 8 of our speaker wires will not be getting used. The brown wire cell phone mute will not be getting used, and the blue-yellow steering wheel control input will not be getting used. It is getting steering wheel controls, but they're done over the data wires for the RR and not through these wires. I'm gonna cap all these off. I'll make my attachments here. I'm also gonna leave a pigtail for power and ground for the backup camera, as well as the remote turn on output that's gonna run down to where we had the amplifier harness in that passenger footwell. Now, if you're not going to be using your speaker wires like we're not, make sure you cap them off individually. A lot of people just like to take some tape, curl them all up into a ball. Don't do that. Set yourself up for success. If anything happens to those wires and they touch each other, you're going to get an amp warning on the radio and you're going to lose all sound. Now that I have my harness all soldered up, there's one last thing I have to do. On the back of the radio for this particular model, Kenwood has the purple-white reverse trigger input. It's kind of short, so I like to add another couple inches onto it. Add a little bit of flexible tubing. We'll add our bullet style connector onto it with a little bit of purple heat shrink so that we know what it's for. Our kit has had time to dry up. This is the acrylic version of it. The paper's still on the back side. Just cracked. So we had made this out of 1/8 inch acrylic. Honestly, the wood did a much better job. We're going to go back to the drawing board and now we're going to make it out of 1/4 inch acrylic and see how that holds up. Oh well, live and learn. All right, second attempt. Now we have 1/4 inch acrylic. a lot thicker. Let's go test fit it in the car and make sure that everything works now that we've put the thicker plastic on. I did do the math to shrink this down. Let's make sure I got it right.
That's it. All nice and in place. I just have to put all the switches back in.
Not bad, not bad. What do you think?
It's awesome.
There you go. Fernando says it's awesome.